Lesson 71, the quadratic formula. Okay, we know a quadratic equation is an equation in which the first term, the first variable term is squared. All right, there are several different ways to solve quadratic equations. All right, quadratic equations can be solved by the first method that we talk about is factoring. Okay, we factor into two binomial terms. If a quadratic equation cannot be factored, we solve it by completing the square. All right, this is when we use the rule of dividing that middle term by 2 and squaring it. One other way we're going to talk about how to solve a quadratic equation is by using the quadratic formula. There's actually a formula that we can substitute these numbers into in order to solve. All right. The quadratic formula is derived from our basic quadratic equation. Now, a basic quadratic equation looks something like this. Instead of numbers, I'm going to be using variable terms. All right, but it looks something like this where a, b, and c are real numbers. All right, so we could substitute numbers in for a, b, and c, but we have an x squared term, an x term, and then a constant at the end. All right, the quadratic formula is derived from this equation using completing the square. All right, if I was to do completing the square from this, I would end up with an equation that looked like this. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This equation here is derived by doing completing the square on the first equation, ax squared plus bx plus c. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking quadratic equations and we are going to be plugging in a, b, and c numbers, constant terms, into the equation to solve for x. All right, let's do an example so you can see what I'm talking about, and then we'll keep working our way through this. All right, so I'm going to give you a quadratic equation. We have 3x squared minus 2x plus 5 equals 0. Now, remember, back in the previous slide, my quadratic equation looked like this. Ax squared minus bx plus c equals 0. All right, and I said a, b, and c can be real numbers. These numbers are your a, b's, and c's. All right, so we're going to use these numbers as a, b, and c. A is 3, b is negative 2, and c is equal to 5. All right, so we're going to use those numbers, and we're going to substitute them into our quadratic formula. All right, the quadratic formula was x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, if you can't remember that, and yes, you are going to be required to have it memorized, okay, but if you cannot remember it, there's a neat little song that a friend of mine in college taught me as we were working through the quadratic formulas, and it goes like this. To the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Alright, so there's the quadratic formula song, so if you need to use that to memorize the quadratic formula, feel free. Alright, so what we're going to be doing is substituting a, b, and c values into the quadratic equation. Okay, this is simple substitution, and then you're just going to simplify. Alright, so we have x equals, in place of b, we have negative 2, so we have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times 3 times 5, and it's all over 2 times 3. All right, if we simplify using order of operations, we have a negative 2. This makes it positive 2. All right, right here, I have negative 2 squared, which makes it 4, minus, and then I have 4 times 3 times 5. 4 times 3 is 12, 12 times 5 is 60. So I have 4 minus 60 All right, 4 minus 60 is negative 56. So I have 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 56 all over 2 times 3, which is 6. All right, keep in mind we can't have a negative in the square root, so we're actually going to rewrite this as x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 56i all over 6. And we have solved for x in the quadratic formula without factoring and without using completing the square, using our nice little quadratic formula. All right, let's try another one together. Next one looks like this. We have x squared minus 3x minus 28 equals 0. All right, the first thing we need to do is determine what our a, b, and c values are. Okay, those are the coefficients or the constant terms. All right, our a should be right here. Since there's nothing there, it's understood to be 1. B is going to be negative 3, and c is going to be negative 28. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use our quadratic formula. All right, x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, and then we're going to plug our values in. Okay, so b is equal to negative 3, so we have minus the negative 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 28 all over 2 times 1. All right, so now let's simplify. A negative 3 makes this positive 3, plus or minus. All right, now let's take care of what's in our square root. We have negative 3 squared. This is 9. Then we have negative 4 times 1, which is negative 4. And then negative 4 times negative 28, which is going to give us 100, let's see. 112. All right, so we have 9, and since there's 2 negatives, it's going to be plus 112. All right, 9 plus 112 is 121, all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Now, in this case, the square root of 121 simplifies. All right, so I'm going to simplify this to be x equals 3 plus or minus, well, the square root of 121 is 11 over 2. I can complete this even further by doing one equation plus and one equation minus. So this is really going to be 3 plus 11 over 2 and 3 minus 11 over 2. And those are going to be our two solutions. All right, so 3 plus 11 is 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. And then 3 minus 11 is negative 8. And negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. So the two solutions are x equals 7 and x equals negative 4. Again, we've solved it without factoring, without using completing the square. We've plugged numbers into our quadratic formula. All right, this next one I want you to go ahead and try on your own using your quadratic formula. We have 2x squared minus 6x plus 4 equals 0. All right, so go ahead and try this using the quadratic formula. Solve it all the way through, and we will check it in class.